And I really wonder, Piers, finally, if you were a Palestinian, if you lived under occupation your entire life, if you never had a passport, if you could not travel, if there were some foreigners who came to your country, stole it, and they controlled your life, your entire life, what would you do?
I wouldn't like it.
Because we need help.
I wouldn't like it. I don't think I would commit a terrorist attack, and I think that was an unforgivable act that day
Would you do?
By Hamas.
Welcome to another episode of the Watchdog with me, Lowkey, here on Mint Press. We hope that you can support us by sharing, liking, subscribing, and commenting here on the channel. But also, please do support us on Patreon. We are 1,000,000% independent as an organization, and we need all the help that we can get to keep going and sustaining this work. So, I'm joined this week by a very special guest, somebody who has been able to cut through the anti-Palestinian and Zionist propaganda in the British media, who is, I would say, a survivor of genocide, who has lost so much and is giving so much to all of us to help us understand better the human cost of this horrific campaign in Gaza, but also somebody who is a documenter of history. And I believe that his testimony will stand over the coming decades and even centuries when people want to look back and look at what exactly happened in Gaza beginning in 2023 until today. We're joined by Ahmed al-Naouq. Ahmed, thank you so much for joining us. I appreciate you being here.
Oh, thank you for having me again.
Habibi. And this book, We Are Not Numbers, is the fruit of Ahmed's labor, as well as so many other Gazans. Tell us about this book, We Are Not Numbers, Ahmed.
Well, thank you very much for having me again, Lowkey. Actually, this is the fruit of more than 59 Palestinian writers, young people who have been documenting these war crimes over the past 10 years. So in this book, we published 74 stories written by young people. These stories are about the human stories, their personal stories from Palestine, from Gaza, that have been written during the past 10 years. And of course, as we say in the introduction, a lot of the media always talks now during the genocide about what happened after the 7th of October. But in this book, we are trying to shed more light on the life of the Palestinians before the 7th of October, and maybe what led to the 7th of October, analytically speaking.
Mm-hmm.
You can understand the situation in Gaza and in Palestine in general if you read the stories from the Palestinians, if you try to skip the mainstream media narrative about Palestine and the way they frame the Palestinians and dehumanize us. You just go to the Palestinians themselves, the young people in Gaza, who have been kids since the blockade started in Gaza, and who have experienced the blockade, the occupation, the genocide, and the many wars that preceded this genocide. This is a collection of the human stories of the Palestinians in Gaza, and it must be read.
And in a way, what I have found often in the English language media is Zionism is discussed only ever as a sort of, and now it will start to be discussed more frankly. But growing up, you'd feel that it was only really the territory for this sort of emotional, intangible, abstract thing that a particular part of the population could feel, but the very clear subjects of Zionism, the Palestinians, were not ever allowed to speak about what Zionism meant materially to them.
Mm.
And a fascinating aspect, I guess, of the story that I found historically when looking at the development of Zionism is when they came to Palestine, you would have what they call the Aliyah, so the first Zionist incursion into Palestine. you were bringing people that did not really know how to till the soil and did not really know how to exist.
Mm.
And then it wasn't until so the first Aliyah was viewed as a failure by Theodore Herzl and other Zionist leaders. But then the second Aliyah, they started, and the reason they viewed it actually as a failure was because Palestinians had to be employed to till the soil for them.
Yeah.
But what that also led to was some Zionists, and this was the precursor to what would become Unit 217, which is the Duvdevan unit, which is the Musta'arabin, who they speak in Arabic, they imitate Palestinians in order to carry out arrests. In some cases, they infiltrate the community for a lot longer. But this phenomenon started prior to that with early Zionists imitating Palestinian dress and trying to. So the Palestinians have such a difficult position of being simultaneously envied and grudgingly admired because of the sort of authentic relationship with the place they seem to represent, but then hated to the point of death, hated to the point of killing, but then completely edited out of the conversation about Zionism. So a Palestinian can simultaneously have their entire life defined by the Zionist project, where they can go, where they can't go, what jobs they can have, what jobs they can't have, even the amount of family members they have. But yet they can't turn around and say publicly in the English language, this is what Zionism has meant to me. And I think that's the importance of a book like this, which has reached many people now in this country. Ahmed, could you tell us a little bit about the success, frankly, of this book?
Actually, it's a huge success. Our book became an instant bestseller, #5 in the UK.
Fantastic.
Although there was a genuine mistake that happened, and half of the pre-orders were released before the release date. But nonetheless, we became #5 on the Sunday Times bestseller in the UK, and also the Irish Times in Ireland. We're expected to release this book in the US in September. So far, it's doing really well. It was translated into Italian. So now we have another version of We Are Not Numbers in Italian. Many translations are coming ahead. Inshallah, Spanish and French and Arabic maybe. We're still discussing. So it was a huge success. And I believe it was a success, not because I am an editor or whatever. It's because this is a collection of stories that were written by young people in Gaza who are still surviving.
Yeah.
Some of them were killed in the genocide, by the way. Two of our writers who contributed here in this book.
And their names?
And their names, one of them is Mahmoud and the other is Yusuf Dawas. And both of them were killed in this genocide, and they have stories here.
Yeah.
But many of the other writers and authors, they're still in Gaza right now. They're still surviving the genocide in Gaza. They're still from a place to another, and they are still starving. And people here in the UK and all around the world are sick and tired of how the mainstream media in their country is sidelining the Palestinians and not telling their stories. And people really want to understand what is going on in Gaza and what was going on in Gaza before even this genocide. And that's why the book became a bestseller. It instantly became a bestseller.
Yeah.
Because of that, because people here really want to understand what is really happening in Gaza. And going back to what you said about Zionism, when I came to this country many years ago, everyone was so scared of speaking about Zionism, and especially the Palestinians. We were not allowed to talk about Zionism. If you criticize Zionism, then you're anti-Semite, and there were these debates about is Zionism is anti-Semitism or not, and it is nonsense. We Palestinians are the best equipped to talk about Zionism and tell you that anti-Zionism is not anti-Semitism. And do you know why we are best equipped to talk about Zionism? I will quote my friend Muhammad al-Kurd here when he said, we are best equipped to talk about Zionism because Zionism is a practice on us. The ideology of Zionism was a practice on my father, on my mother, on my family. My family was killed because of Zionism. My family was killed before the 7th of October genocide, my brother and my mother, because of the ideology of Zionism. My homeland was stolen away because of Zionism. I do not belong to Gaza entirely. We have lands in Jaffa, and we were kicked out of Jaffa because of Zionism.
Yeah.
My mother was kicked out of Beir Saba because of Zionism. We have been living through genocide and starvation and a blockade for the past 18 months because of Zionism. I lost my home because of Zionism. How cannot I talk about Zionism? We must talk about Zionism. And we all must talk about Zionism. Because I always say in many places that it is not just the Palestinians who are being slaughtered there in Palestine. With every Palestinian killed, part of us is killed, all of us, all around the world. So the matter of Palestine is a matter of everyone. It's a matter of humanity. And we all should share this burden. And we all should think of the Palestinians, and we all should talk about those who are murdering our brothers and sisters in Palestine in the name of Zionism, in the name of this death cult ideology.
Yeah. Malcolm X, he said, we didn't land on Plymouth Rock. Plymouth Rock landed on us. And that's very much the case for this ideology, which is so anti-life. And I think one aspect of what happens here is you also make opposition to Zionism and those that dare to try and speak out against it, they take a risk. They become hyper visible in a very critical way. A very critical lens is visited upon them. An attempt to irrationalize them plays out, where you try and find some sort of ulterior, irrational motive for why they're making the points they are. But you have a plethora of charities in this country which are directly aiding the Israeli army, despite the fact that they should not, according to the regulations of the Charity Commission, be doing such a thing. You have tens of individuals, at least, that we know of, that have British citizenship, that are in the Israeli military or have been in the Israeli military, even in the Golani unit, for example, the one that carried out the massacre of the paramedics in Rafah not so long ago. And so, in a way, the other question I wanted to ask you also, Ahmed, is the job that has been done on the diaspora side of things, because I feel that specifically those in the West have been targeted since Oslo with a psychological warfare that sees us as deciding that the limit of what we can do is within international law and is within NGOs. And I believe that is a direct relation to Oslo, because it said that this is the oasis, which was an oasis. It was never meant to be real. And it was all a precursor to genocide. The same as you have disarmament, whether it was Sabra and Shatila to now, disarmament has also always been a precursor to massacre.
Yeah.
So it's almost as if there's a fork in the road, but every direction is leading towards massacre.
Yes.
And if you read, Noor Masalha, the fantastic book, The Expulsion of the Palestinians, this is in the roots of Zionism from the very, very beginning. It was always the aim. The eventual aim was either population transfer, displacement, or massacre. And so now we've been sort of led to that point. How hard has it been for you, especially when watching such horrific scenes in a place that's dear to your heart and being visited upon people you love, to find a way to, this is empowerment, and I can feel that you feel more empowered post this book. How difficult has it been to carve out a way to actually be effective and confront this from outside of Palestine in the midst of all of this horror and terrible power? The type of high-tech power that Israel wields today is the magnitude of it is insane, and I think it leaves a lot of people feeling completely powerless. But you haven't, you've taken action. How difficult has it been to carve out that that space.
Kareem, our enemy is very powerful.
Mm.
There may be one of the most powerful armies of all time in all the world. Not because the Israeli army is powerful,
Because they're
but because
bloodthirsty.
they're bloodthirsty and because they have backers.
Yeah.
They have all the West and they have the US and you have Europe, all of them behind
Yeah.
Israel. And they have all the technology and they have all the bombs and they have, I don't know, but
Yeah.
even 18 months of genocide and the war that they're waging against Palestine did not destroy their economy. I don't know.
Yeah.
But this seems to be well off.
Mm.
And we all understand that they are very powerful. Their propaganda is very powerful. Their machinery of death is very powerful. Their media is very powerful. But we are more powerful in one sense, which is that we have the truth. And it's very easy to talk about truth because we don't lie, we don't cheat, we don't spread disinformation. And once I believe that I have this power of a truth, I am indefeatable. And no matter how Israel tries to kill the Palestinians, I have to be honest with you. I'm not very hopeful about about the future. I think Israel can destroy all the Palestinian people in Gaza and the West Bank and all around the world. Not all around the world, but in Gaza, the future is very bleak and it's very, very, very dark. I do not pretend to believe that maybe the Palestinians will survive this genocide. But I know eventually that this is the beginning of the end of Zionism. No matter what they does to the Palestinians are suffering and they're still suffering. Unfortunately, we tried everything in our power to stop the Israelis. We failed to stop the Israelis. But I know that in the future, Israel is not winning. In the long term, Israel is not winning because monsters can't win.
Well, I mean, also, when we look at the Nakba, the first Nakba, you had a situation where there were only a few million Palestinians in existence. And Israel was able to expel almost a million of them. But since then to now, there's over 12.5 million Palestinians in the world. And so, actually, in a way, if Israel's objective is to steal the land, it will be very tough to achieve, but possible. And it will take a lot of killing to do. But it will also take the killing of their own reputation forever. But also, the Palestinians are not decreasing in numbers of human beings. And they're not stopping calling themselves Palestinians.
Never.
The fact that you even now have 12.5 million or more in the world who call themselves Palestinian, in a way, what the Zionists would have hoped is that they no longer refer to themselves as Palestinians. They become other forms of nationality. They do not identify with it anymore. So in a way, the objective on a macro level is genocide, but it's failing. It's still failing. And it still will fail. You know, we're likely over the next decade or so to see a world where there's 20 million Palestinians.
And even if we do not reach this point where we are 20 million or 30 million Palestinians, we are more in numbers because we have our supporters.
Yeah. Yeah.
We have people who totally and wholeheartedly believe in the Palestinian cause. And I call them all Palestinians.
Whereas Israel has caused enemies.
Yes.
It has more enemies than ever.
Definitely. And I am someone who doesn't believe in borders. What is the difference between a Palestinian who lives in Rafah and an Egyptian who lives in the Egypt Rafah? It's just a border that was drawn by the colonial powers like some 70 years ago. I don't believe in all of borders. And yes, I'm very proud to be Palestinian. I call myself Palestinian. But Palestine is more about like genetic or ethnicity. It is more about believing in justice, believing for causes of equality and justice and human rights. And when we talk about that, I believe that the Palestinians are in hundreds of millions of people all around the world, and they will never abandon Palestine.
Yeah. And so in a way, when Zionism kills Gaza, it makes a certainty the killing of Zionism. Because even in the event that Gaza was, God forbid, wiped off the map totally, there's no way that Zionism will be deemed acceptable by the rest of the world on the basis of what they've seen in Gaza. Because there were no cameras during the Nakba in terms of, the pictures, but there was nothing really, and we've come a long way from poisoning the well in Dir Yassin. You are talking about high tech, and here's the disadvantage for high tech. So with big tech, you can carry out any manner of indignity from physical distance. So you can kill someone and never even see them die. But with big tech, everything's recorded somewhere.
Yes.
And so it's logged on a computer somewhere. And it can't be kept classified forever. And that information eventually leaks out and gets out in some way. So the ability to log what Israel's doing and also cover it in real time is nothing. There was nothing like that at the time of the Nakba in 1948.
Definitely.
So we're now in a situation where it's created an archive of its own
genocide.
Yes. And that archive will loom as a shadow over Zionism far more powerfully than I think they're aware of.
Definitely.
Yeah.
And more than that, people all around the world have watched videos and pictures of the genocide in Gaza.
Yeah.
And they have seen a lot of dead children.
Yeah.
And that cannot be forgiven.
No.
That cannot be forgotten.
No.
That cannot be... they will not let Israel get away with all of this murder. And we're talking about how many? 17,000 children?
And this articulates who the killer is more than who the killed was. If you have awareness that somebody has killed this many children, you are not going to deal with that person or that entity in the way that it's very self-defeating ultimately, because they're not going to be able to carefully slot into. I think they look at the US in Iraq and Afghanistan, they look at history of US imperialism, they're like, oh well, everyone, and I guess that's why what they seek to do is build up leverage within different states. That's why you have basically security state functions of the US and of Britain carried out by Israeli, supposedly private companies, but really they're arms of the Israeli Ministry of Defense. And so they seek to build up leverage within those societies to try and build heavy top-down power. But they've always been like that. The Zionist movement has always been top-heavy. It's never been good at building grassroots kind of things because it doesn't have any basis or authenticity to what it's trying to do. So, it's a horrific but also fascinating time in terms of the shifts that we're starting to see. I mean, how much do you put into what the UK government has been saying recently, for example? How much credibility do you take that with?
I don't believe the British government. Simple. They lie. They lie to us. They told us before that they stopped arming Israel, and then we realized that the Labour government is arming Israel more than the Conservative Party before, when they were in government. And they say all the talks, but at the same time, they're still sending spy flights to Gaza every single day. So I don't really believe them. If they are really serious in condemning Israel, they would stop the arms trade with Israel. They would make any actual pressure. They don't make any actual pressure. It's just words, so that the people in Britain who are boiling, who are really angry with the British government, so that they can feel good and excuse the British government. But come on, we're smarter than that. We know that they're lying to us. And they're lying to the British people.
Yeah. It's an insane period of human history. And, I really feel that a book like this has contributed so significantly to the documenting of all of this. Ahmed, if there was one chapter in this book that you would want...
You can't ask me this question.
Maybe that's a tough one. Well, tell me about some of the chapters that stick out to you.
Well, this book is of 10 chapters. Each chapter talks about a year in the war, a year during the past 10 years in Gaza. And all of these chapters are important, unique in different ways.
Yeah.
But the last chapter talks about the genocide in Gaza, and until the present moment. So I encourage people to read actually all the chapters.
Yeah.
If they want to know more about the March of Return, for example, they can go to 2019 and 18. If they want to know more about the war in 2021, they can go there. If they want to know about normal human life, they can go to the year 2016 and 2017. So it depends on which people really are interested to know more about the history of Gaza. And they will find everything here in this book.
Mm. And tell us also about some of the writers in there, because there's some very remarkable people I see on the list of authors.
We have many, in We Are Not Numbers, we recruited more than 400 writers in Gaza, in the West Bank, and all around the world, young Palestinians. Some of these young writers, when they wrote their stories for We Are Not Numbers, they were just young contributors from Gaza, and now they have become established authors and writers. I'm very proud of the many writers here. One of them is Musab Abu Toha, who won an international award in journalism a few weeks ago, and Hind Al Khudari, who is a very renowned journalist right now. But I am most proud of the young people who were killed during this genocide. Four of our writers were killed in this genocide. Our co founder, Rifat Al Arir, was killed in this genocide. So we lost four of our writers, Mahmoud and Yusuf and Huda and Muhammad. All of them lost their lives along with family members in this genocide, and they have stories here in this book. Many of our writers are still young, but they are really smart and they're really talented. I'm very proud of Huda's Cake, for example, who has a poem at the end of this book, and now it's being read by everyone all around the world, even in Italy, in one of the book festivals. People are coming every day and they read her last poem, Till Them. It's a very powerful poem, very heartfelt, and it's a poem that when you read it, you will not forget. Many of our writers are really, I don't like to single out some writers, but every single writer in this book has a story, a unique story that he had to tell to the world. And people need to read these stories.
Yeah. Tell us about Rifat Al Arir.
Rifat is one of the co-founders of We Are Not Numbers. But he wasn't just a co-founder. We had many co-founders of this book, but Rifat was always special. And I said it before, we lost Rifat and we can never replace Rifat. And some people are angry because I'm talking about Rifat. Let them be angry. Rifat was a legend. He was one of the best writers you could ever meet. He was one of the best educators you could ever meet. He was someone who was very dedicated to the cause of Palestine. He was very talented. And I remember at the beginning of We Are Not Numbers, when we launched in 2015, he would come to our office every week and he would give a training session on writing to our writers that would last to 3 or 4 hours. And, and our young writers would attend it and they would enjoy the last minute of these training sessions. He kept training our writers for the past 10 years. Whenever we recruit a new batch of writers, he would come and train them how to write their stories, how to write effectively, how to do storytelling. And he was one of the most special educators in Gaza and in Palestine. He was very strong and he was very fierce, uh, but he he was someone when you know him, you cannot forget him. And he died. He left us, but he left uh, some of his books and some of his poetry that will be immortalized by history and by educators and students all around the world.
Absolutely. And Rifat was someone I was in some communication with online. And I sobbed when they killed him, man. This was a special person, you know. A very, very special person, as was every single soul that Israel has stolen during this time.
He was killed with his sister, and his daughter was killed a few months later, and his grandchild was killed as well.
Yeah.
And he was killed for what? He was assassinated.
Yeah.
For his tweets.
Yeah.
We live in a world like this where you can be assassinated with your family members for some tweets.
And so-called journalists in the United States, pro-Israel journalists, can help in that targeting online. This is a very different. It's a very different Nakba. Very different. In terms of,
it's an akba of ethics and morality as well here in the West.
Of course, absolutely. Gaza has exposed everyone. The mask has dropped from everyone. Because the way that people interact with Gaza is the way that they would interact with the same equation anywhere else. Would they allow people to be killed on an industrial scale in front of them daily and not say anything if they felt it was advantageous to themselves?
Yes, Karim.
That's the equation.
We have to say something. Being exposed is not enough.
Mm.
There must be a time of accountability.
Absolutely.
Those who aided and abetted the genocide, those who are complicit, those who are active participants in the genocide should find accountability. And we know that there are French and British and American soldiers who went to Israel to fight the Palestinians in Gaza. And these people should find accountability. And we know about some journalists, some so-called journalists, who went to Gaza embedded in Israeli army. And then they wrote a book about Gaza. Who allowed these people to enter Gaza?
Israelis,
but this is a Palestinian land, and they know Gaza is a Palestinian land, and they should not enter without the permission of the Palestinians themselves.
Absolutely.
These people should find accountability. They should be investigated.
They should accessories. They're accessories to the crime.
Exactly.
Yeah, I agree. They're accessories to the crime. Ahmed, you also work extensively with Palestine Deep Dive. Do you want to tell us about that?
Well, Palestine Deep Dive, we are hoping with the work that we do in Palestine Deep Dive is to create the Palestinian media here in the UK, where the Palestinians, young or old, or the pro-Palestinians or academics, or you don't have to be pro-Palestine to be featured on Palestine Deep Dive anyway. It's a place where the Palestinians can come together and be themselves and talk to the world in English, in a language that they can understand, about the hopes, the dreams, the struggles, the politics, the art, the culture of the Palestinians. It will be the hub of the Palestinians who want to tell their stories to the world. And those who want to come and talk about Palestine freely, without media scrutiny and without media like negligence and targeting. So this is a safer place for the Palestinians and non-Palestinians to come and speak about Palestine.
So Ahmed, unfortunately time is against us today. If you could leave us with, firstly, a message to the Palestinians still in Gaza.
Allah يكون بعونهم.
Inshallah.
You know, Allah, may God help them. I know what they are going through is unspeakable. No one in the world, no one on earth can understand how hard life for Palestinians in Gaza is. No one can understand how they feel because it's unparalleled. It didn't happen in history. Maybe it happened in history, but now we're watching it live. And although we're watching them live and we see exactly what's happening to them, we could never feel how they're feeling. So, Allah يكون بعونهم. And I want them to remember that as long as we are alive, you and I, as long as we are alive, as long as so many free people in East and in the West are alive, we will never let Israel get away with their murder, with the murder of the Palestinians. We will fight for them till the last breath. And it doesn't matter how much intimidated and threatened and we feel here in the UK or in the West. We will keep on the fight. We will keep on raising the Palestinian voices. We will keep on talking about Palestine and the Palestinians, and we will not let Israel get away with their murder.
Thank you very much, Ahmed. Thank you for joining us for this episode of the Watchdog on Mint Press. Please do support us in any way you can. And most importantly, please do pick up We Are Not Numbers now. It's important that these stories are told and heard wide around the world. Thank you.